After near racial war, to those of us who can remember, scenes like these remain wondrous. In the South Africa of today, elections are commonplace. Hundreds of thousands of homes have been built. Water and electricity has been provided to millions. It's shown the planet that it can be world-class. Yet, this is also a country where textbooks don't get delivered on time. Patients die needlessly in sometimes filthy hospitals, protests erupt every day, and people despair over rampant corruption. And even now, police can mow down 34 protesters with nobody being held accountable. Some remain stuck in their racial lagers, still unable to see through the eyes of others. It often feels like a country which is struggling to shake off its past.
Oh, wow.
At Power FM in Johannesburg, anger and frustration are sentiments talk show host Eusebius Makaiser is familiar with.
What is the state of our democracy? Is it healthy? What do we understand by democracy? And is democracy only about elections? Let's have that conversation. Abdul, do you think our democracy is in a healthy state?
It's in a terrible state, man, you know. You know, if ministers and whoever is in the government can line their pockets and we can't say anything, I mean, what does that tell you? You know, I mean, people just do what they want to and you can't hold them to account for it.
Like right now, I think it is still healthy, but we are seeing some moves to try and undermine that healthiness of our state, and we should stop that.
Some point to protection of state information laws and a sense that some in the government support secrecy over openness and unaccountability over responsibility. That is a danger sign. But at another radio station, this time in KZN, some eNCA FM listeners say democracy is also about citizens being responsible for their own lives.
Government can only help us to a certain extent, and it is up to us to optimally utilize the opportunities provided for our own betterment. I do believe that the government does deliver, but the obstacle is really the public servants who do not want to carry out their responsibilities.
If the first 20 years of democracy have given us peace, freedom, and some sense of reconciliation, what do we need to do in the next 20 years? Well, if Nelson Mandela's vision for South Africa is to be achieved, we simply need to work harder to close the gap between the rich and the poor. Professor Adam Habib, Vice-Chancellor of Wits University, has written a book about this. He called it South Africa's Suspended Revolution. And he says much has changed for the better since 1994.
If you describe apartheid as a crime against humanity, then it should be very easy to go beyond that crime against humanity. What the real question is, you judge yourself against the Freedom Charter. And yes, 20 years is too early to reverse 350 years of oppression and exploitation. But 20 years is enough to tell us whether we're on the right path.
He says South Africa is on the wrong path and that inequality has worsened every year since 1994.
One of the biggest dangers with inequality is that it polarizes society. It creates social pathologies like gangsterism, child and woman abuse, violent crime, violent service delivery protests, inflated expectations. We need an agreement between business, labor, and the state about what is the minimum program. We've achieved political inclusion for the last 20 years. How do we achieve economic inclusion? Because if we don't do that, we lose the whole castle. So the question is, let's come together and say, what are the trade-offs that we are prepared to make as business, labor, and the state to achieve that?
Back in Eusebius Makaiser's studio, many listeners worry that the biggest threat to democracy will be the failure to deliver for the poor.
Democracy will forever be at stake, because what one asks themselves is, what is democracy? Is it just the freedom to speak, to boo, to do whatever?
because I think that democracy is attached to the livelihood of the majority of this country. And as long as the majority's living conditions do not improve, democracy will be at stake.
The foundations for democracy appear then to have been dug, but the house has yet to be built.
Yes, we've got deep inequality, we've got poverty, unemployment, corruption, all of those different things. But there is a democratic spirit, not a deeply entrenched culture, but there are elements of South Africa becoming used to democracy as far as I'm concerned. We have an active citizenry, we have an amazing civil society movement, we've got a press that is independent. I can say whatever the heck I want without having to worry what will happen to me at night at my house. And we have opposition parties that do badly for tactical reasons, but they're allowed to do as well as they can.
Democracy should lead to accountability, which should lead to better delivery for everyone. The danger now may be that some lose hope and turn to populism and autocracy, for democracy is not yet in our DNA. As ever in South Africa, though, where there are some seemingly good reasons to be pessimistic, there are also always plenty of signs of hope. Ben said, Johannesburg.
Know more. eNCA.com